Drummerly.com Unlimited Drama Series.
My name is Tom Brandt, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my wife Clara was screwing her boss while planning to take half my assets in a divorce I didn't see coming. But let me start with the moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night in October when I heard Clara laughing in our kitchen, talking to someone on her phone. Not the polite laugh she used with her mother or the fake one she reserved for my coworkers at company parties. This was different, intimate, sexual, the kind of laugh that made my stomach drop, even before I understood why. "Julian, you're terrible," she whispered, thinking I was upstairs working on quarterly reports. "Tom's so predictable, he probably thinks I'm talking to Lacey about book club." I froze at the top of the stairs, my laptop balanced in one hand, coffee mug in the other. 41 years old, and I was about to get my first real education in betrayal. "No, he won't suspect anything," Clara continued, her voice dropping to that husky tone I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "He's too busy with his little audit reports to notice I've been wearing new lingerie. God, Julian, what you did to me in your office yesterday, I'm still thinking about it." The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering against the hardwood floor with a crash that echoed through our supposedly happy suburban home. "Tom?" Clara called out, her voice instantly shifting to the sweet, concerned tone of a loving wife. "Are you okay, honey?" I stood there among the ceramic shards and spreading coffee stain, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. Clara appeared at the bottom of the stairs, phone conspicuously absent, wearing a silk robe I'd never seen before. "Just clumsy," I managed, forcing a smile. "You know me." "That's my predictable husband," she said, already turning away. "I'll get the mop." Predictable, right. We'd see about that. The next morning, I sat in my office at Midwest Audit Solutions, staring at spreadsheets but thinking about silk robes and intimate laughter. My boss, Priya Patel, knocked on my doorframe. "You look like someone stole your lunch money, Brandt." "Just tired," I said. "Clara's been working late a lot. Big campaign at the agency." Priya raised an eyebrow. She was 55, divorced twice, and had zero patience for bullshit. "Working late, huh? With that smooth-talking boss of hers?" "Julian Drake. Yeah, he seems dedicated to his employees." "I'll bet he is." Priya sat down across from my desk. "Tom, you're a good auditor because you notice things other people miss. Maybe it's time to audit your own life." That afternoon, I called my old college roommate, Oscar Chen. If anyone could help me figure out what Clara was really up to, it was Oscar. He ran a small tech consulting firm from his apartment, which looked like Radio Shack had exploded inside a Best Buy. "Tommy boy," Oscar grinned when he opened the door, still wearing pajama pants at 3 p.m. "What brings you to my fortress of solitude?" "I need help with something technical." Oscar's expression shifted. He'd known me for 20 years, long enough to recognize when I was serious. "Come in, want a beer?" "It's Tuesday afternoon." "Your point?" I explained about the phone call, Clara's new habits, the mysterious late nights at Drake and Associates. Oscar listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making notes on a tablet covered in comic book stickers. "So you want to know if your wife is cheating," he said when I finished. "And you want proof." "I want to know the truth." "Fair enough. But Tom, once we go down this road, there's no going back. You sure you want to know?" I thought about Clara's laugh, her new lingerie, the way she'd started showering immediately after coming home from work. "I'm sure." Oscar cracked his knuckles. "All right then, let's find out what Mrs. Brandt is really up to." The first thing Oscar taught me was that modern infidelity leaves digital footprints everywhere. Clara had gotten sloppy, probably because she thought I was too predictable to notice. She was about to learn that predictable didn't mean stupid. "Check this out," Oscar said, pulling up Clara's social media on his laptop. "She's been tagged at restaurants downtown during her supposed overtime hours. And look at this. She's wearing that silk robe in a selfie from last week." The photo showed Clara in our bathroom mirror, robe slightly open with the caption, "Feeling confident lately." 43 likes, including one from Julian Drake. "That bastard liked a photo of my wife in lingerie," I muttered. "It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective." Oscar pulled up Julian's profile. "Check out his recent posts." Julian Drake was everything I wasn't. Tall, artificially tanned, with the kind of smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. His recent photos showed expensive dinners, a matte black BMW, and what appeared to be the same restaurant where Clara had been tagged multiple times. I need more than social media circumstantial evidence, I said, way ahead of you. Oscar held up a small device that looked like a thumb drive. Bluetooth audio relay. We pair this with an old smartphone, hide it in her car, and you can listen to her conversations from anywhere. Isn't that illegal? It's your car too, right? Both names on the registration? Yeah, but then it's legally gray at worst. Besides, she's the one cheating. We're just documenting it. The next evening, I volunteered to clean Clara's car. She was upstairs taking one of her increasingly frequent showers, so I had plenty of time to slip Oscar's device under the passenger seat and sync it with my phone. All done, I called upstairs. Your chariot awaits, my lady. Clara appeared in a black dress I'd never seen before. You're sweet, Tom. Don't wait up. Julian's got us working on the Morrison account until late. I kissed her cheek, tasting expensive perfume. Drive safe. 20 minutes after she left, I was parked outside Drake & Associates with Oscar, listening to Clara's car audio through my phone. The building was mostly dark, except for a few windows on the third floor. She's not in the office, Oscar observed. My phone crackled with Clara's voice. I can't believe Tom actually cleaned my car. He's been so attentive lately. Maybe he suspects something, came Julian's voice, smoother than aged whiskey and twice as toxic. Tom, please. The man thinks foreplay is asking if I want the lights on or off. He has no idea what real passion looks like. They both laughed. I gripped my phone so hard I thought it might crack. Where are we going? Clara asked. That new place on Michigan Avenue. I want to show you off. What if someone sees us? Let them. I'm tired of hiding what we have, Clara. You deserve better than some boring accountant who thinks excitement is finding a discrepancy in a tax return. He's an auditor, not an accountant. Same difference, both equally dull. Oscar put a hand on my shoulder. You getting all this recorded? I nodded, my jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. They were about to learn that this boring auditor had some surprises left in him. Over the next week, I documented everything. Clara's lies about working late, Julian's hands-on management style, their plans for a weekend getaway while I was supposedly visiting my mother. Most damaging of all was the conversation I recorded Thursday night when Clara thought I was asleep. Lacey, you should see the way he looks at me, Clara whispered into her phone from our bathroom. Julian makes me feel alive again. Like I'm not just some suburban housewife, married to a man who gets excited about quarterly reports. What about Tom? Came Lacey's voice through the speaker. What about him? He's comfortable, reliable, boring as hell. He'll never divorce me. He's too scared of being alone. So I get the best of both worlds. Julian's excitement and Tom's stability. That seems kind of cruel, Clara. It's practical. Besides, Tom's probably happier not having to pretend he knows how to satisfy a woman. This way, everyone wins. I lay in bed listening to my wife discuss our marriage like a business transaction, and something cold and calculating settled in my chest. Clara thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to discover I'd been playing a completely different game all along. Friday morning, I called in sick to work. Clara kissed my forehead with fake concern before leaving for another busy day at the office. Feel better, honey. I'll probably be late again. You know how Julian gets when we're close to a deadline. I'm sure he's very demanding, I said. After she left, I drove to Oscar's apartment with a plan that had been forming all week. If Clara wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real strategist looked like. You want to do what? Oscar asked when I explained my idea. Hack into the presentation system at her office. I want everyone at Drake and Associates to hear exactly what Clara thinks of her coworkers, her marriage, and her boss. Tom, that's actually brilliant and completely insane. I love it. Oscar's fingers flew across his keyboard. Their system is pretty basic. Standard corporate setup, probably hasn't been updated since 2019. Give me an hour. While Oscar worked his magic, I organized the audio files I'd collected. Clara mocking Tom's sexual performance. Julian calling their coworkers small-minded suburbanites. Clara laughing about how easy it was to fool her predictable husband. And the crown jewel, a recording from last night where Clara told Julian she was planning to file for divorce after the holidays and take half of everything that boring bastard has saved up. Got it, Oscar announced. I can access their conference room display system remotely. When do you want to do this? Monday morning. They have their weekly all-staff meeting at 9. You sure about this? Once we press play, there's no taking it back. I thought about Clara's fake concern that morning, her lies about working late, her plans to divorce me while keeping me in the dark. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Monday morning, I sat in my car across from Drake and Associates, watching employees file into the building. Clara arrived at 8:30, looking stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Julian pulled up 5 minutes later in his ridiculous BMW, and I watched them exchange a meaningful look in the parking lot. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Oscar. Do it. Through the third-floor windows, I could see the conference room filling up. Julian stood at the front, probably delivering his usual motivational bullshit. Clara sat near the back, checking her phone. Then the screens lit up with a photo of Clara and Julian at dinner, followed by the audio of their first conversation I'd recorded. Even from the parking lot, I could see people turning to stare. The photo changed to one of Clara in her silk robe, while her voice filled the conference room. Tom's so predictable, he probably thinks I'm talking to Lacey about book club. Julian rushed to the control panel, but Oscar had locked him out. The presentation continued with Clara's greatest hits, mocking her husband, laughing about her affair, discussing her divorce plans. The final clip was her conversation with Lacey about keeping the best of both worlds. Through the windows, I watched chaos erupt, employees pointing and whispering, Clara's face turning the same shade as her dress, Julian frantically trying to shut down the system while his own voice played through the speakers, calling his staff small-minded suburbanites and bragging about his conquest of the boring accountant's wife. Security finally pulled the plug, but it was too late. In the age of smartphones, everything had been recorded by a dozen different people. By lunch, it would be all over social media. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara. We need to talk. Now. I typed back. Sorry, busy with quarterly reports. You know how predictable I am. Then I drove to my lawyer's office to file for divorce. Clara's sister Melissa called me that afternoon, her voice shaking with rage. How could you humiliate Clara like that? She's family, Tom. Family doesn't destroy each other. You're right, I said calmly. Family doesn't cheat on each other either. Everyone makes mistakes. Planning to take half my assets in a divorce while screwing her boss isn't a mistake, Melissa. It's a calculated betrayal. You're being vindictive. Clara made one error in judgment. One error? I have weeks of recordings. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a months-long campaign of lies and manipulation. Our mutual friends weren't much more supportive. Dave and Jennifer Morrison, who'd been couple friends with us for 5 years, invited me to lunch to discuss the situation. Look, Tom, Dave said, cutting into his steak with unnecessary force. We get that you're hurt. But what you did to Clara was public humiliation. It was cruel. What she did to me was private humiliation for months, I replied. The only difference is audience size. Jennifer leaned forward, her voice taking on that condescending tone people use when they think they're being wise. Marriage is complicated, Tom. Sometimes people drift apart. Clara was probably just confused, looking for something she felt was missing. So instead of talking to me about it, she decided to screw her boss and plan a divorce behind my back? That's your definition of confused? You're not exactly the most exciting guy, Dave said. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to Clara's needs. I stood up, throwing my napkin on the table. You know what? You're right. I should have been more attentive. I should have noticed when my wife started wearing new lingerie for other men. I should have realized she was lying about working late. I should have been more like Julian, smooth, charming, and perfectly willing to destroy someone else's marriage for my own entertainment. Tom, sit down, Jennifer hissed, looking around the restaurant. People are staring. Let them stare. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. Clara made her choice, and I made mine. If you can't understand that, then maybe we were never really friends to begin with. I left them sitting there, probably discussing what a vindictive bastard I'd become. By evening, I'd received similar lectures from 3 other couples in our social circle. Apparently, exposing adultery was worse than committing it. But I wasn't done, not even close. That weekend, I drove to Julian's upscale condo complex. His matte black BMW was parked in its usual spot, gleaming under the parking garage lights, like some kind of automotive monument to douchebaggery. I'd come prepared. Oscar.
Second Instagram, 47 posts, all of her. You built her a shrine. You posted her on my birthday.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Had given me a care package, industrial strength glitter, liquid fish sauce, and a dozen bumper stickers with various creative messages about infidelity. I also had a spray bottle filled with a mixture that would smell like rotting eggs in the sun. First, I carefully pried open the BMW's air vents and filled them with the fish sauce and glitter mixture. Then I applied the bumper stickers. Honk if I'm cheating, my other car is my secretary, and my personal favorite, caution, small penis inside. Finally, I sprayed the egg mixture under the door handles and on the windshield wipers. By tomorrow morning, Julian's precious BMW would be a rolling advertisement for his moral character. I was admiring my handiwork when footsteps echoed through the parking garage. What the hell do you think you're doing? Julian Drake stood 20 feet away, still wearing his expensive suit, but looking considerably less polished than usual. His perfect hair was mussed, his tie loosened, and his face was flushed with anger. Just leaving you a little message, I said, holding up the empty spray bottle. Nothing permanent. Unlike adultery. You crazy bastard. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about your affair with a married woman, especially when I play them the recordings of you planning to help her hide assets in a divorce. Julian's face went pale. What recordings? The ones where you discuss how stupid and predictable I am. The ones where Clara talks about taking half of everything I've worked for. The ones where you both laugh about how easy it is to fool the boring accountant. Auditor, Julian corrected automatically. Same difference, right? That's what you said. Julian stepped closer, his hands clenched into fists. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something? I think I've exposed something. There's a difference. Clara deserves better than you. She deserves someone who can actually satisfy her. Someone who understands what a woman like her needs. Apparently what she needs is someone else's husband and half of someone else's assets. Funny how that works. Julian swung at me then, a clumsy haymaker that telegraphed itself from a mile away. I stepped aside and he stumbled past me, his expensive shoes slipping on the concrete floor. Careful, I said. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. Clara might have to find a third option. You son of a bitch. That's when I pulled out the fire extinguisher I'd taken from the emergency station near the elevator. One blast of foam caught Julian square in the chest, sending him stumbling backward into his vandalized BMW. Oops, I said. Safety first. Julian stood there dripping with fire-retardant foam, glitter sparkling in his hair, the smell of fish sauce beginning to permeate the air around his car. He looked like a rejected extra from a low-budget music video. This isn't over, he sputtered. You're right, I agreed. It's not. By Wednesday, the fallout from Monday's presentation had reached nuclear levels. Clara had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into her unprofessional conduct. Julian was facing his own disciplinary hearing, especially after several employees came forward with complaints about his inappropriate behavior. But our mutual friends were still taking sides, and most of them weren't choosing mine. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came Thursday evening. I was in my apartment. I'd moved out of the house the day after filing for divorce. when someone pounded on my door like they were trying to break it down. I opened it to find Dave Morrison, Jennifer, Melissa, and two other couples from our social circle standing in the hallway, like some kind of suburban intervention squad. "We need to talk," Dave announced, pushing past me into the apartment. "By all means, come in," I said. "Can I get anyone coffee, beer, a reality check?" "Cut the sarcasm, Tom," Melissa snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done to Clara? She's devastated. She can barely get out of bed." "I'm sure Julian's been very comforting." "Julian's wife filed for divorce yesterday," Jennifer said. "His kids won't talk to him. His career's probably over. Are you happy now?" I looked around at their faces. Angry, disappointed, accusatory. These were people I'd known for years, people I'd considered friends, people who apparently thought adultery was forgivable, but exposing it was unforgivable. "Let me ask you something," I said. "If your spouse was cheating on you, planning to divorce you, and laughing about how stupid you were with their lover, what would you want your friends to do? Support the cheater or support you?" "That's not the point," Dave said. "The point is, you went nuclear. You destroyed two families over what was probably just a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis that lasted months and included detailed financial planning for a divorce? That's some crisis." "Clara made a mistake," Melissa insisted. "She was confused, unhappy, looking for something missing in her marriage. Instead of trying to fix things, you decided to destroy her life." "I tried to fix things for 15 years," I said, my voice rising. "I tried being the perfect husband, the reliable provider, the guy who never complained when she worked late or needed space or wanted to go out with friends. And you know what I got for it? A wife who thought I was so boring and predictable that she could cheat on me right under my nose, and I'd never figure it out." "So you decided to get revenge," Jennifer said. "That's not the Tom we know. Maybe you never really knew me. Maybe I got tired of being the nice guy who finishes last while his wife finishes with her boss." "This isn't you talking," Dave said. "This is anger and hurt. We get that. But what you did was wrong, and you need to make it right." "Make it right? How exactly do I do that? Take Clara back? Pretend the affair never happened? Let her keep half my assets as a reward for cheating?" "You could start by apologizing," Melissa said. "Clara's willing to forgive you for the humiliation if you're willing to work on the marriage." I stared at her. Clara's willing to forgive me? For exposing her affair? For destroying her reputation and career over a mistake? Her mistake was getting caught. Her bigger mistake was underestimating how smart her boring husband really is. "Tom," Jennifer said, her voice taking on that therapeutic tone again, "we're worried about you. This isn't healthy. This obsession with revenge, this need to punish Clara, it's eating you alive." "You want to know what was eating me alive? Listening to my wife mock our marriage while she planned to divorce me. Hearing her laugh about how easy it was to fool me. Watching her lie to my face every single day while she screwed another man." "But you've made your point," Dave said. "Everyone knows what happened. Clara's been punished. Julian's been punished. When is enough enough?" I looked around the room at their expectant faces. These people who thought they knew what was best for me, who thought I should just forgive and forget and go back to being the predictable, reliable Tom, who never made waves. "You want to know when enough is enough?" I said. "When Clara admits what she really did, when she stops playing the victim and takes responsibility for destroying our marriage. When people like you stop making excuses for adultery and start holding cheaters accountable for their choices." "That's never going to happen," Melissa said. "Claire's not going to grovel for your forgiveness. She's moving on with her life, and you should too." "Oh, I'm moving on," I said, "but I'm not done yet." They left after that, shaking their heads and muttering about how I'd changed, how revenge had made me bitter and vindictive. They were probably right. The old Tom would have quietly accepted the divorce, maybe even blamed himself for not being exciting enough to keep his wife interested. But the old Tom was gone, replaced by someone who understood that being nice didn't make you noble. It just made you an easy target. The divorce proceedings began the following week, and Clara's lawyer immediately tried to paint me as an unhinged stalker who'd violated my wife's privacy and destroyed her career out of spite. Mr. Brandt engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment, the lawyer argued during our first hearing. He illegally recorded private conversations, vandalized property, and publicly humiliated my client in her workplace. This is not the behavior of a rational person seeking a fair divorce settlement. My lawyer, Sarah Chen, Oscar's cousin and apparently the family shark, smiled coldly. Your Honor, Mr. Brandt discovered that his wife was engaged in an extramarital affair and was planning to conceal assets in their divorce. The recordings were made in a vehicle jointly owned by both parties, and the harassment consisted of exposing adultery and fraud. If Mrs. Brandt is embarrassed by her actions becoming public, perhaps she should have considered that before engaging in them. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, who looked like she'd seen every variety of human stupidity, reviewed the evidence with the expression of someone reading a particularly unimpressive restaurant menu. Mrs. Brandt, she said finally, did you engage in an extramarital relationship with your supervisor, Julian Drake? Clara's lawyer whispered something in her ear. I refused to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me. And did you discuss hiding marital assets from your husband in preparation for divorce proceedings? Another whispered consultation. I refused to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me. The judge turned to me. Mr. Brandt, did you place recording devices in a vehicle jointly owned by you and your wife? Yes, Your Honor. After discovering evidence of infidelity, I wanted to document the extent of my wife's deception. And did you subsequently make these recordings public? I exposed my wife's affair and her plans to defraud me in the divorce, yes. The judge made some notes. Mrs. Brandt, are you claiming that your husband's actions caused you financial harm? Clara's lawyer nodded. My client has lost her job and suffered severe reputational damage. Due to her own documented behavior, Sarah interrupted. Mrs. Brandt lost her job because she engaged in an inappropriate relationship with her supervisor and made disparaging comments about colleagues. Mr. Brandt simply made her own words public. The hearing continued for 2 hours, with Clara's legal team trying to portray her as the victim of a vindictive husband's revenge plot. But the recordings spoke for themselves. Clara's own voice, planning to take half my assets while mocking me as too stupid to realize what was happening. When we broke for lunch, Clara cornered me in the courthouse hallway. Are you satisfied now? She hissed. You've destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, my relationship with Julian. Was it worth it? You destroyed our marriage, I said calmly. I just made sure everyone knew who was responsible. I made a mistake, Tom. People make mistakes. But what you did was calculated and cruel. What I did was calculated and truthful. There's a difference. Julian was right about you. You're boring and predictable, but you're also vindictive and small. I'm glad I found someone who actually knows how to treat a woman. How's that working out for you? Last I heard, Julian's wife took the kids and half his assets. Turns out she didn't appreciate his expertise in treating women either. Clara's face flushed. You think you've won something, don't you? You think destroying my life makes you the victor in this? I think exposing the truth makes me honest. Something you might want to try sometime. The truth? You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I was planning to divorce you. And yes, I thought you were too boring and predictable to ever figure it out. But you know what else is true? You were a terrible husband. You were emotionally distant, sexually inadequate, and so focused on your boring job that you never noticed your wife was desperately unhappy. So, instead of talking to me about it, you decided to cheat and plan a divorce behind my back. That's your idea of handling marital problems. I tried to talk to you for years, but you were always too busy with your spreadsheets and your audit reports to pay attention to what I needed. What you needed was another man's dick and half my bank account. Very specific needs. Clara slapped me then, hard enough to echo through the courthouse hallway. Several people turned to stare, and I saw someone pull out their phone to record. There's the real Clara, I said, touching my stinging cheek. Thanks for the demonstration. She stormed off, her heels clicking angrily on the marble floor. I had a feeling that little outburst would be all over social media within the hour. The afternoon session went better for our side. Sarah presented evidence of Claire's affair, her plans to hide assets, and her general contempt for our marriage. The judge listened with growing impatience as Claire's lawyer tried to argue that adultery and financial planning didn't constitute grounds for an unfavorable settlement. Your Honor, Sarah said in closing, Mrs. Brandt engaged in a months-long affair while planning to defraud her husband in their divorce. She showed no remorse, no attempt at reconciliation, and no honesty about her actions until forced to by evidence. Mr. Brandt seeks only a fair division of assets he earned through 15 years of marriage to a woman who was actively betraying him. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. Clara would receive 30% of our joint assets instead of the 50% she'd planned to take. She would also be responsible for her own legal fees and would receive no spousal support. The court finds that Mrs. Brandt's actions constitute a material breach of the marital contract, the judge announced. Her infidelity and attempts to conceal assets justify a deviation from standard community property division. Outside the courthouse, Clara's sister Melissa confronted me one last time. I hope you're proud of yourself, she said. Clara's lost everything because of your need for revenge. Clara lost everything because of her own choices, I replied. I just made sure she faced the consequences. But I still wasn't finished. Clara had one more lesson to learn about underestimating her predictable husband. The final scene of our marriage would take place where it all began, in the house we'd shared for 8 years, the house that was about to become someone else's home. 3 weeks later, I got the call I'd been expecting. The house had sold, and the new owners wanted possession by.